Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Kelsey Ullum. I'm an associate director at the Center for Civic Leadership, and I'm joined by my colleague and two alumni panelists tonight. So I'll let them introduce themselves and then we'll get started. Michi, do you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming this evening. My name is Michi Heckler, and I'm Assistant Director at the CCL.
Great. Heather, would you like to introduce yourself?
Everyone, my name is Heather. I studied health sciences when I was at Rice, and now I'm doing my Wagner here in the UK.
And Thomas.
Yep. Hey everyone, nice to meet you. My name is Thomas, and I graduated last year from Rice studying political science, and I did my Wagner last summer in Morocco.
Awesome. Okay, before we go any farther, can Heather and Thomas, can you just give us a brief overview of what your Wagner project was about and who you worked with, and just the short version of your research?
Yeah, I can go first. So yeah, I'm in the UK. I'm still doing my Wagner right now. I'm going to wrap up next month, but my project is focused on decision making around green spaces, so things like parks, gardens, and how they can be used for public health. So looking at who those different stakeholders are, how they collaborate together, and what allows for equitable collaboration. So yeah, that's a bit of what I'm doing. And then in terms of host affiliate, I'm with the University of Exeter. So I have a university affiliation, and yeah, everything's been really great so far.
Yep. In my project, so I was in Morocco. My project was studying perceptions of university students on the English and French language. So a large part of that was going to different universities across the country and giving out a survey on a lot of different perceived importance of the languages, why they may be studying English or French. And yeah, I talked to some policy centers and other kind of stakeholders also. And in terms of my affiliate was just a professor at one of the universities in a city called Meknes. But I also had a few other kind of university professors that reached out to that also helped me along the way.
Cool. Thank you both. That's helpful. I can't wait to hear more about your projects and your process tonight. So this evening, we're going to be talking about kind of the three major topics that are coming up at this phase of the process, and that is choosing a host affiliation, choosing a host country, identifying a host affiliation, and getting started with your project proposal. As you can probably tell by our panelists, this most closely applies to Wagner and Fulbright. But I think there will be some general takeaways for other fellowships tonight too. So if you're interested in Watson or Marshall or any of those, you might still glean some tips from this session. But yeah, most of what we're going to talk about is related to Wagner and Fulbright. So we'll go through these three topics and I'll share just some basic information, and then I'll cue our alumni to share about their experience. And then we'll have plenty of time at the end for questions. If you think of a question and don't want to forget it, feel free to throw it in the Zoom chat and we'll get to it at the end. Before I go any further, I want to do a plug for our CCL resources to help you through this process. So most of you are probably already a part of our fellowships Canvas page. I imagine I recognize a lot of names on the call tonight, but if you haven't filled out the interest form and indicated that you want to apply for Wagner or Fulbright or any of the other fellowships, please do that. We'll share these links in the chat shortly. But this is how we know how to reach you for other events and announcements and things that come up throughout the fellowships process. We'll post announcements on the Canvas page and we'll email everybody who's filled out the interest form. So please make sure you do that so you're on our radar and in our system. And as always, we have our advising hours every day with CCL staff. So if at any point you have questions or just want to chat through with somebody, get feedback, brainstorm, we're all available to help you with that. And if the advising hours don't work for you, you can always email us and we'll schedule an appointment. So let me throw these in the chat. There's some links for you. Okay, so let's jump into it. So choosing a host country. How many people do we have on the call right now? Probably too many to like unmute, but I am curious like where everybody is in this process. Maybe you have an idea of where you want to go, or maybe you're like, I'll go anywhere, and you're trying to narrow it down. Unfortunately, with Fulbright, you do have to pick just one country. With Wagner, you can choose more than one location. I'd recommend no more than 3, depending on how long you want your experience to be. But I have seen students do kind of like a comparative thing by choosing 2 different countries and framing their research around the different contexts. So with choosing a country, there's a lot of questions you can ask yourselves, a lot of things that you can think about. So you might want to think about if you want to be in a city, or if you're okay with being a little bit more remote. I've talked to some students whose main concern is safety and having resources and communities around them. So they tend to go for cities. But if you want something a little off the beaten path, you might be okay with something a little bit more rural. Of course, foreign language considerations, that's always something to keep in mind if you speak the language or have experience with the language, or if a lot of people speak English and you'll be okay. You might want to go back to a place that you've been. That's definitely something I see in a lot of applications. Students like study abroad for a semester and then want to return to that country to go deeper and explore more beyond their semester there. Or you might want to go somewhere totally new, someplace you've never had the opportunity to go, and use Fulbright and Wagner as your chance to do that. I think it's also, it's hard to think that far ahead, but if you can kind of think about what comes after Fulbright and Wagner for you, what's the next step in your trajectory, and how will the world region that you choose kind of affect that path? Maybe you know you want to work in developing countries in your career in the future, so that might help guide where you choose, or maybe you know you want to go to grad school in Europe one day, so you decide you want to go to Europe, or decide you want to go somewhere else because you're going to Europe for grad school. But just kind of think about how this fits into your larger trajectory. What I do not recommend is getting too caught up in the numbers game, especially with Fulbright. As you might have seen on the Fulbright website, there are little numbers next to each award that each country gives out. So it can be really easy to say, oh, I'm going to go for this country because they give out 60 Fulbright ETA awards, even though I really want to go to this other country, but they only give 2. I've seen a lot of students just like get really like wrapped up in that. And my advice for you at the end of the day is to choose a location that you genuinely feel excited about and that you feel like you can write a strong application for, because that's going to be the most authentic and compelling application at the end of the day, regardless of how many awards they're giving out and what the award rate is and all of that. It's much better to do that than try to like squeeze yourself into a country that you're not as excited about just because the odds are in your favor. Okay, so let's hear from Heather and Thomas. How did you all choose your host country? And if you don't mind kind of like walking us through your decision process and how you kind of narrowed down to the location that you did.
Yeah, I could start on this one. So I studied political science and I was like interested in international relations. And then also I took some language courses. So I took Arabic and Russian while I was at Rice. And so I was interested in languages. And so I wanted to do some sort of research related to languages. And I basically just started looking at what countries have like an interesting language environment. And Morocco is like very interesting. Like they have like Arabic, French, Spanish in the north of the country, Berber, like the traditional language. So it was just, I basically saw what I was passionate about studying at Rice and then use that to see where maybe where in the world is there like a unique environment or a situation where I can like further explore this passion and where I'd be really interested to meet people in that field. And that's how I kind of ended up at Morocco. And then I also just talked to some people I knew on campus. Like I talked to my Arabic teacher, I talked to some people at the Baker Institute who have done international research and kind of use them to bounce ideas and get feedback and help me kind of think of my proposal and kind of solidify the country. And so that was the steps that I took.
I think so for me, um, so I knew that I wanted to, my place could have been quite broad, like with green spaces and impacts on health. I could apply as a case study to a lot of different places. So I kind of narrowed it down to Europe because I was really inspired by like the Netherlands and their just their infrastructure around like biking and just like all their greenery. So I kind of wanted to sort of narrow it down into Europe. But that was still quite broad. And then after that, I thought I actually talked to I think someone from Denmark, and then I realized that language is also a big one because what I wanted to do was interviewing and being able to read policy. And I think like I have a little bit of knowledge in other languages, but not enough to do full interviews. So I thought, okay, I think it'd be best if the country at least has a primary language in English. Um, so what I did was I kind of ended up cold emailing multiple like possible affiliates and then asking if they had any recommendations, and then kind of like going down that because I was still quite open and just kind of I was more interested in having a good host rather than the exact country. Um, and then it ended up with having a really good meeting with my current mentor now. And the UK wasn't originally on my list, but and especially not here in Cornwall, which is quite rural actually, because I had imagined myself being a bigger city, but kind of letting myself be open to exploring that, and I think it has worked out pretty well.
That's great. Thank you both. Yeah, I appreciate that you both said that sometimes it kind of just depends which affiliate gets back to you first and which one ends up working out. So you might have a short list of options and then start reaching out to people and just kind of go with whichever one feels right. So that's a great way to narrow it down. I have a question in the chat about if the session will be recorded. Yes, it is being recorded right now and we'll share it afterwards. Thanks for stopping by. Okay, let's keep moving to host affiliates. So first of all, what is a host affiliation? So I have a definition on the next slide here. A host affiliate is an individual or an organization in the country that you want to go to who will guide you in your research. A lot of people think this has to be somebody in academia. It doesn't. It could be a nonprofit, it could be a think tank, it could be a museum, an archive, it could be a community organizer, an artist, but they should be in the field that you want to do your research in. And this is important because they need to understand the local context of where you want to go and help you make sure that what you're proposing is actually appropriate and feasible for where you want to go. And they can help with questions that come up along the way. I think people's relationship with their affiliate can look a lot of different ways. It's kind of a spectrum of maybe you're working with them every single day. Maybe they already have a research project going and you're just kind of jumping in to help. Or maybe you have your independent research project and you just kind of reach out to them when you have questions or if something comes up. So either way, they need to know what they're doing, and they need to be able to vouch for you in the form of a letter of support for your application. So this host affiliation is required for Fulbright Research and Wagner. It's not required for Fulbright English teaching. And yeah, generally this is really important for the selection committee to see that somebody with this expertise and with the knowledge of the host country is vouching for you. It really demonstrates that local buy-in. I guess I'll also just note that you're not asking a host affiliate for funding, right? You're applying for funding through Wagner and Fulbright. So be careful with the language you use when you're asking somebody to be your affiliate. You're not necessarily asking for sponsorship from them. You're just asking for their support in other ways, like connecting you with resources, helping with any questions or speed bumps that come up in your research, that type of support, not financial support. For Fulbright, some countries have some preferences or specific requirements for affiliates. So just make sure you're looking at the country profile page to see if there's anything to keep in mind there. And there's also like specifications for the letter itself. So yeah, just keep that in mind. We won't get into those details now, but like a screenshot of an email exchange with an affiliate will not suffice for these applications. Like we actually need a letter on letterhead that goes through how they're going to be supporting your work. So on the next slide, the first question I get is, well, where do I even start with finding an affiliate? I think the short version is start with your Rice connections and then kind of move out from there. I think there's a lot of like, obviously, well-connected professors and researchers and mentors available to you here at Rice, even if you haven't had a class with them. If they're in the Rice community, they're probably going to take you up on an offer to get coffee and just chat about your interests. Alumni, so other students who have done the work that you're interested in or gone to the country that you're interested in, they could connect you with where they've been, because if an affiliate has hosted a Wagner or a Fulbrighter before, they're more likely to say yes a second time. And of course, cold emailing, it does work. It's scary, but it works for some people, as I'm sure we'll hear from our panelists. But these are just some examples of how I've heard from other students, how they found their affiliate. So going to campus events and talking with speakers, like actually looking at the authors of interesting articles and reaching out to them. And again, working through your networks here at Rice. So with this process, don't get discouraged if you don't get any responses right away. That's just like part of the process. You're going to hear back from some people and you're not going to hear back from others. Don't take it personally. All you need is one yes. And I think the process of reaching out and summarizing your work and advocating for yourself can really help build confidence and give you practice in talking about what you want to do and why you want to do it. So at the end of the day, you're going to gain a really cool mentor who will support you through this experience and beyond. So my advice is to lean into the connections you do have. Don't be afraid to reach out to the people that you don't know, and cast a very wide net, because yeah, you might hear back from 1 out of 10 people, and that might be the one you go with. And also keep in mind that the whole thing with networking is like, even if you're talking to somebody who doesn't have any connections in the country that you want to go to, they might know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody and can make that connection for you. So it's definitely a long game, but it's worth it in the end. And the CCL can help you through every step of it. So one last slide on this, and then I'll turn it over to our alums. As far as actually sending that cold email, I would recommend keeping it as concise as possible, just like a short 2 to 3 sentence summary of your interests, and then defer to an updated resume to tell about all the cool experiences that you have. I would not recommend writing like a 5-paragraph essay in an email about how qualified you are to do this work. You're going to lose them, and then they're going to forget about it and not respond. So you want to be very clear and straight to the point about what you're asking from them. And I would definitely offer a Zoom call or a phone call to get into the details and discuss more and suss out the vibes and make sure that they're actually somebody that you want to work with. We have resources about this on our Canvas page as well. And the CCL can like read through an email before you send it out if you're feeling nervous about it. But let's hear from Heather and Thomas. Tell us about your process for finding a host affiliate, how you identified your options and the initial outreach, and how you ultimately chose the affiliate that you worked with.
I can start this time. So I think primarily I went through cold emailing. I tried to reach out, like I tried to look at Rice people, but I couldn't find too many people that were quite at the intersection of like urban planning and environment and public health because it's a bit niche. I did reach out to some, but it didn't have as much luck. So what I did was I did cold emailing, and how I started with that would be I would just go on Google Scholar and just type in keywords that I knew my research would be around, like green spaces, public health, equity, things like that. And then I would just kind of read through articles that kind of looked either had similar methodology to mine or kind of a similar topic, and then just like clicked on the authors and then looked through their web pages and kind of jotted those names down, and then I would reach out to them. I think this approach, I think I reached out to about 30 people, and maybe about at first I got no responses. So don't get discouraged, because I even remember I was sending out so many emails and I was updating Kelsey and I was like, no one is responding. And I think it made it extra hard because it was August and a lot of people were on vacation. So also note that as well. And I noticed that a lot of like I think in Europe a lot of people take a holiday around that time. So that might be something to factor in your timeline. But yes, also with like cold emailing these types of people, usually if you can find like their research paper, usually they're also pretty popular or well known, so they get a ton of emails also, and your email might just get lost in their inbox, or they might not be or they might be too busy. So don't take it personally. Just honestly, it's a bit of a numbers game sometimes. You just have to keep sending things out, and then sometimes you can try following up if you're really interested with them. What also helped me too is whenever I sent an email, I ended it with something like, oh, like if you're not able to, or if like something like that, if you know of someone who might be interested, because that's actually how I got connected with my mentor now. Was I emailed this organization that did work similar to what I did, but they weren't really working with students. And then they were like, oh, we don't take students, but we know of this person here and he does work with students. So that's how I actually got mine. So that's kind of a nice like way for them to not just completely ignore you if they don't want to like accept you, but also gives them like a ability to respond and give you something helpful. So yeah, that was sort of my process. I think overall it took about like a month and a half. So make sure you just like start those emails early and just kind of have like a running list of like when you sent those emails, if you want to follow up, who you might want to continue emailing and things like that.
Yeah, I also sent a ton of emails, so and didn't get a lot of responses too. But I mean, once you kind of write up the template for the email, it's not hard to just send it to a lot of people. And so, yeah, I would just recommend sending it to a lot of people. I targeted people at like think tanks and policy centers and universities mostly. And lots of the universities, you could find the professors' emails online. So I would just send out a bunch of emails to basically anyone like somewhat related to what I was interested in doing research with. And the thing that's good about that too is that lots of people, even though they didn't end up being my affiliate, eventually they would respond to my email or get back to me, and then they'd be a resource for me in the country also. So for example, some of the professors would help me like distribute my survey at the universities, or they would give me recommendations on where to stay in the city, or give me access to like the campus. So that's why I think it's good to reach out to as many people as possible, because like everyone at the end of the day will help you once you get there. And yeah, I think that's mainly it for the reach out. It also took probably like over a month or so in terms of like hearing back from everyone. But I also hopped on like I took a call with some of the people that I reached out to, and they helped like craft my proposal and help give me advice, which is super useful too. So I think that's another benefit of just reaching out to a lot of people, because lots of them are willing to help you with your research and give you advice about how to go forward with it.
That's great. As a follow-up, can you tell us what your relationship was like with your host affiliate? Like how often you communicated with them, how they supported you, just to give our listeners an idea of what that role is and what it can look like.
Yeah, so my case might be a bit different than Heather, because I was in a lot of kind of different cities in Morocco. So my affiliate was based in one of the cities, so it wasn't like a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis type thing. But leading up to when I got there, I got on a call with him like multiple times. He helped me like refine my survey, help connect me with other people like across different cities in Morocco. So I probably met at least like 3 to 5 times, I'd say, before I actually got there, like on a call, and he helped me with a bunch of different stuff. And then once I got there, it was kind of like if I had any questions related to like transport, they would also be really willing to help out with that and answer any like logistical questions. And then they had a lot of university contacts, so I would mention that I'm in this city this week, and they would be like, "Oh, I know people at this policy center or at this think tank." And so I'd say when I was there, I probably was in contact with them by email, like on a weekly basis, just giving them updates and asking for any like help or guidance. And then once I got to the city, I met up with them there, and they kind of helped me more on like a day-to-day basis with my survey and some of my research like questions and everything I was doing related to that.
So for me, I also met with my host affiliate a couple times over Zoom before I came to the UK, and they were really helpful with like trying to help me refine my idea, because I think when I came in, I had multiple methodologies. I was really ambitious, but I was like, I don't know if it's really possible to do all of these things. So it was really nice to have someone to bounce ideas off of to make sure it's feasible, and then also to sort of know how these issues might play into the local context of things. And then when I got here, I'm really lucky that my mentor is really involved in the work that I do. So I kind of have, at the very beginning, it was sort of like bi-weekly check-ins to make sure I was adjusting okay. But now it's like every month we'd have a meeting, and he'd check in on just how I'm doing with my research. And he's been able to plug me into like existing research projects that are similar to mine, so I can talk with people who are maybe more qualitative researchers or something like that. So it's kind of nice that like I'm in a situation where I'm sort of in a research center and I have a lot of different colleagues that I can also talk to besides my host affiliate.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for that. So I think both of you had like really self-driven projects, right? I think like just hearing about your relationship with the affiliate, I can tell like, yeah, this is a very independent experience. I mean, you have a community of people supporting you, but you have to be able to initiate those conversations and ask those questions and find the right people to talk to and help you. So yeah, that's something that you should definitely talk about in your essays. So a lot of people are like, okay, where do I start? Like whether or not you have research experience, it can be kind of hard to know like what exactly needs to be included in the statement of grant purpose. So this is just a basic outline to get you started and get some pen on paper. Basically what we're looking for is the who, what, where, when, and why of what you want to do in your country. So who you'll be working with, who the affiliate is, and why you're excited to work with them, as well as if you have a team or a certain population that you'll be working with, if it's qualitative research. Just explain who are the players in this process, and who will you be interacting with on a daily or regular basis. The what is the day-to-day, so the research activities, the methodologies, and I'll definitely let our alumni talk about what they filled in here. But it should be really easy to imagine how you're going to be spending your time during this research project. The where, this is really important. The first question the committee is going to ask is, well, can they do this in the United States? Like, why do we need to fund them to go to another country? So you have to be really specific about why you chose the country that you did, why you chose the specific location. And then the when is like the timeline, right? So maybe you organize your essay into different phases. Like phase 1 of the research is going to be collecting this information. And then once I have that, I'll move to phase 2, which is synthesizing things. And then once I have that, I'll have phase 3, where I return to the drawing board and ask questions about things that I missed in the initial review or something like that. I'm just making this up. But I think you can kind of break up the work and the research question into a timeline to, again, paint that picture of how you're organizing your experience. And then the why, the bigger, so what, why does this even matter? How it matters to you and your development professionally, personally, academically, how it relates to your field at large, and then how it relates to the mission of the fellowship that you're applying to. So if you're feeling stuck on building a proposal, I would say just like refer to this and start bullet point answering these questions, and then you'll have a skeleton that you can flesh out from there. So just one more slide about general tips about the proposal itself. Again, it should be feasible. This is because this is such an independent experience. The committee is really looking to make sure that you can actually fulfill what you're saying you are going to do. And again, that's why the host affiliate is so important. And compelling, right? So the ROI thing, it's kind of like a weird economic term, but I think it kind of makes sense here, the return on investment, right? Like you need to make sure that the committee really believes that giving you this money is going to pay off for you and your success, and will contribute to the field. So it should be interesting and noteworthy. It doesn't have to be revolutionary or innovative, but I think it should be interesting and readable by many different audiences. So just keep in mind that the folks who review your application at Rice are from all different fields and studies. So they might not necessarily be in or from your department and your area of research. So you need to be able to write in a way that they can still understand why what you want to do is important. And make sure you definitely use the CCL as a resource, but not just us, right? Like we can help with a lot of things, but talk to other mentors, people in your field, your host affiliate, get their feedback on your proposal as well. Like Thomas said, that's really important before you submit. All right. So Thomas and Heather, this is a question I get a lot. How much of your project did you have figured out before you started reaching out to affiliates? Did you have a really clear idea already before you started your outreach, or did it kind of come together as you were talking to people?
Yeah, definitely not super clear. Yeah, I spoke with the affiliate like a few times, and the affiliate kind of helped me shape that research. So I feel like as long as you just have a general idea of what you want to do, um, I think I don't think it needs to be very like clear going into like the conversations with affiliates. I think actually like it was really helpful to get like feedback and advice from them, and they helped me like get more detailed into my proposal. So yeah, I wouldn't stress about having it like yeah super worked out before you reach out to people.
Yeah, I echo that as well. I definitely narrowed things down a lot by just talking to my host affiliate. I think when I reached out, what I had in mind what was like general methodology that I wanted to do or general research questions. So it was very much like a broad framework, like, oh, okay, these are my research questions. Maybe if I have a couple sub questions, and then maybe phase one of my research might look like this, and then these are phase one, two, three. But it was very like open to being tailored to what my host affiliate thought would be feasible, and kind of having a conversation with that, I think is really important.
That's great. And how about when you sat down to write your statement of grant purpose, how did you structure that essay, and how did you decide like what your research activities would be? I think some people kind of struggle to know what methodologies to use, so I would love to hear about how you all actually did the research.
I think in terms of methodology, I kind of, well, first I sort of inventoried like what are my own skill sets, what do I feel comfortable doing um, on my own or with some support. So that kind of narrowed down like qualitative or quantitative for me. I felt like I was more of the qualitative side. And then I guess I looked at my research questions and thought, what would be the sort of the best way using my skills like to try and answer that? And what have I done in terms of research in the past that might be able to like sort of be used in this situation? So it's kind of like inventorying what I'm able to do, and then also thinking about like what would best sort of answer my questions.
Yeah, same thing with me. It was mostly qualitative. But in terms of I guess coming up with the methodology that I did the research, it was mostly like a survey. That was like a central part of my research. So it was just talking to not only the affiliates but a few people at Rice to help me shape that survey. And then one other thing was translating it into Arabic, and so I worked with my Arabic professor to do that too. So I think just like using kind of the connections you have at Rice too, I think helps a lot when developing your like idea and methodology, and they could like give you pointers on that. And then it was also just being since mine was like going to different universities and a lot of like moving around, lots of like preparation in terms of how I would do that, and going into like the statement of grant purpose and then like the interviews, I was had like a very clear idea of why it was necessary to go to each place and how I was going to get there, and like some of the policy centers or universities in that area.
Cool, thank you. All right, my last slide of the night before we just open it up to general Q&A is just another reminder about how we can support you through this process. So we can give feedback on your application drafts. We can help you strategize how to communicate to affiliates or anyone else. If you feel stuck or just like have some ideas but don't know where to go, we can help troubleshoot and brainstorm and just be a sounding board and give advice if you're feeling overwhelmed by this process. And if you're still in the phase where you're trying to figure out which fellowship you want to apply for, which is totally okay if you're still in that phase, we can talk through those options. Maybe you want to go abroad, but maybe not for a whole year. We have other fellowships that are for a shorter amount of times. So we can find something that works for you. These are guidelines for a timeline. If you're not at this point yet, don't freak out. But I think like right about now, if you haven't, start reaching out to people to be a host affiliate. I would start sending those emails, like set a goal for yourself to get all the emails sent by July 4th. And maybe this weekend, start making a list of 3 to 5 people that you want to send those emails to. Maybe more, as we heard from our panelists, maybe a lot more. But start there, just start getting emails out. And then by mid to late July, hopefully you'll have something secured. So that still gives you like a month or so to write the application essays. We all know once the semester starts, it's going to get crazy. So I would definitely take advantage of these summer months and give yourself time to go through multiple iterations of these drafts. And in the next month, we're going to be having another session like this, specifically focused on essay writing. So when you get to that point, we'll have some more resources there for you. All right, I think those are all the points I wanted to make sure we cover, but we've got plenty of time if people just want to unmute themselves or put questions in the chat related to anything that we talked about today or anything else. It doesn't have to be restricted to these topics.
Hi. So when you said early fall deadlines, does that include the Wagner? Or what's like the deadline for that fellowship specifically?
Yeah,
If
for
you know.
Wagner, I believe the deadline is it September 1st? I'm gonna pull up Canvas right now to double check for you, but there's also a spring deadline for Wagner. So keep that in mind. You have 2 opportunities to apply for that one. And there's really no difference between the 2 deadlines. Just that you find out sooner whether or not you got it if you apply in fall. But let me confirm, because it's the same deadline as the Fulbright internal deadline. Which is, yes, Sunday, September 1st. Thanks for your question.
Thank you.
I see a question in the chat. If you don't get Wagner in the fall, can you apply in the spring? Yes, you can reapply. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes the selection committee is like, hey, this is a good start, but we think you need to make some changes and reapply, and then we'll take another look. So the Rice committee will give you some feedback to work off of. So yeah, sometimes
that happened to me actually. Yeah, I applied the fall deadline, and then I got feedback from the committee and like made changes, and then got it in the spring. So
yeah. Other questions? I'm realizing I'm referring to the internal process for Fulbright. So I'll just take this time to clarify that. Like the Fulbright national deadline is sometime in October. But if you want to get the campus committee evaluation form included in your application, it's kind of like a endorsement or nomination form from Rice. If you want that included in your Fulbright application, then you'll need to have all of your materials ready by September 1st and meet with the Rice committee and all of that, which is like a good process to go through anyway, because again, they'll give you feedback before you submit to the national deadline. But yeah, just something to keep in mind. If you're going for Fulbright, you'll need to have your things ready a little before the national deadline. Heather and Thomas, do you have any other tips that we didn't get to, like anything you wish you had known or any words of wisdom for people going through this process?
Maybe like make sure that you sort of do like a preliminary literature review as part of your process when you're like either developing your proposal or trying to be able to answer questions that you'll be given in the interview, because in the interview they might ask you like kind of questions like Kelsey mentioned, like why this place, like what's sort of the big picture context text, like what's novel about this, things like that. So I think when you kind of make sure you sort of have that in the background so that you can kind of cite things or refer to things and give them more concrete examples, then that's definitely very helpful.
Yeah, I think one thing was helpful for me on my like the second go around with interviews was that I'd had some conversations with people like at Rice before that, with some professors, and like with people you know in your network. And I think the interviewer, the committee will kind of like to see that you've been like discussing it with different people, even if it's like just you had a couple like 30-minute calls. I think it's a good idea to say it just shows that you're serious about it, and those calls can often help you kind of narrow down and come up with like methodology or good strategies to do your research. And I think one other thing too is like I think one of the questions that they usually ask is kind of like, why do you have to be in the country for this research? I think Kelsey might have mentioned that earlier is one of the questions, but I would definitely just have a good answer like prepared for that question as well. So to make a strong case, like why you actually have to be there and what you're going to gain from going to the country itself.
Thank you. I see another question in the chat about how you chose a research topic. So this is coming from someone who sounds like they have a lot of different interests and are not really sure how to like narrow down to one research topic. Did either of you experience that?
Yeah, I think for me, when I did the outreach to the affiliates, I kind of just said I'm interested in researching languages in Morocco and kind of left it like very open-ended. And then during the conversations I had with affiliates, we kind of went over the like language situation in Morocco and kind of bounce ideas on what the potential research could be. And that helped me narrow it down. I also read like recent literature on like languages in Morocco to see what like recent studies were about. And so I looked at those studies and thought like, how can I like slightly differentiate myself from those studies? And so that's how I kind of came up with my topics, mostly looking at the studies as guidance and to see how I can do something similar, but also kind of have my like own unique like survey or take, and then yeah, bouncing ideas with affiliates too. They really help me like narrow it down more specifically.
Yeah, I would agree with that strongly too. I think, yeah, I also sort of had a lot of ways I could take my research project in the beginning, and I think looking at existing research articles to see what actually piqued my interest and what about it was something I could do, like that was more similar, or how could I tweak it so that it's still more in my skill set or relevant to my place. So I think looking at, yeah, just kind of going down a rabbit hole, honestly, on Google Scholar or just Googling things and trying to see what piques your interest and what you think you can do are the two main things I would say.
That's great advice. Thank you. Yeah, I would second what you all said. I feel like just talking to people, they'll be able to give you tips and they'll also be able to tell which topic you seem more excited about and kind of guide you towards that. Other questions? Okay, cool. Well, appreciate you all joining, and we'll follow up with an edited recording after this. Yeah, so sorry about that, but thank you all for sticking with us and for your thoughtful questions. And we'll hang back for just a couple minutes in case anybody is typing up a question in the chat at the moment, but appreciate you all. See you in advising hours. Thanks for coming.